Hello. So today I'm going to do demonstrations of the three holding pattern entry techniques. Now I'm going to be recording this video sort of live. I've not planned anything at all, so if I make some mistakes or stutter or stammer, please forgive me, but I'm just kind of doing all of this live in one go sort of thing. So before I start talking about the first entry technique, I'm going to be flying at Inverness and I'm going to be using this holding pattern. So this is a right hand holding pattern using the Inverness VOR as the fix for the pattern. So to set up this initial flight, what I've done is I've just simply taken off, climbed to 3,000 feet and started flying directly east, as you can see on the heading indicator there. Pardon me, losing my voice already, brilliant. So, first thing I'm going to do is we're going to do a direct entry from here. And I've deliberately flown in this direction to allow for a direct entry. But you'll see, as I return back to the holding pattern, you'll see me go through the various steps that I talked about in my last video, my tutorial, and you'll see how this all works out. So, first thing to do is to find out where we are exactly in relation to the fix. So we should be on a radial of about 090. Might be slightly different. There, so it's about 096, 097 roughly. So what I'm going to do is turn around to the reciprocal, which will be 275, 276, 270. Around about there. And that should take us, or start taking us back towards the fix. Now if you remember from the holding pattern entry techniques, the first step of each holding pattern entry is to fly directly to the fix. Now, while we're waiting for the plane to turn around, what we need to do next is figure out what the reciprocal of the holding course is. So if we have a look at the charts, the sort of the inbound leg, the direction that we need to fly towards the fix is 244 degrees. So we take the reciprocal of that, which is 064, and that gives us our the reciprocal of the holding course. Now we are turned around. I just readjusted the VOR indicator there so that we've got everything lined up the way we want it. Now, next up, we need to do our little hands trick to kind of draw out the pods diagram here. So it looks like we're flying. Yeah, we're still flying at approximately 275. So if I kind of overlay the picture of my hands again and the pods method there, so it looks like the left hand would start at 165 degrees, or sorry, the horizontal line would start at about 165 degrees approximately, and finish at let's see here, it would be 10, 20, so it would be 3, 4, 5 degrees there. Now if so we've got our little pods kind of diagram overlaid there on the heading indicator, and then if we draw a line out to the reciprocal of the course hold, so that was 064 degrees. If we draw that down, you can see that 064 degrees falls into the direct entry sector. So what I'm going to do now is from there, or from here, fly a direct entry. Now you can see that as we're approaching, we're slightly off on the radial there, so not a big deal, not a massive deal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and line up with that. I believe if I turn this way, this should do it. It's a bit weird because I'm looking at the radial at the moment, so I kind of have to think a bit back to front with the way things are. If you want to think in terms of going forward, all you simply do is just roll the VOR around, and this gives us the reciprocal of the radial. So I'm actually a little to the right of where I want to be. So I'll just do a gentle turn there. Remember, the closer you get to a VOR station, the more sensitive this needle becomes, so it will swing left and right a lot quicker and a lot more readily. And we're only about 4 miles away now, so just make some gentle yet quick turns here until we're flying directly to the fix. Now, once we hit the fix, remember for direct entry, as soon as you hit the fix, then you just begin your standard rate turn and begin the hold as normal. I'm not going to fly an entire loop of a holding pattern, I'm just going to fly directly to the fix for each of these examples. So we're about 3 miles away now, and we'll know when we hit the fix because the VOR instrument will sort of go dead. It won't receive a signal because VOR, the way that VOR radios work is they actually have a bit of a radio dead zone directly above the radio station. So once we kind of get over the top of the radio station, that's when we know we're flying directly over it, and then from there we can begin our holding pattern. As I said, I'm not going to do that in this video because I've already covered sort of a live demonstration of a holding pattern in my holding patterns tutorial. So all I'm trying to do now is just make sure that we keep this lined up as best as we can. We're about 1.7 nautical miles away. I might have to do a slight turn to the right again just to keep us lined up. Theoretically, if I should be flying directly west, but given there might be a little bit of wind pushing me about, I have to kind of slightly adjust for it. 1.2 miles. So the needle's going to start moving quite a lot now because we're really close. And just keep an eye on the VOR indicator here, and you should see this will go dead in a moment, or it'll lose signal in a moment. 0.7 nautical miles. I think we're relatively on track there. So you can see the needle's starting to move off to the right now. I'm not going to bother turning to chase it because we're way too close now. And you see we got the nav kind of warning flag there. The needle kind of came back to center, and then as we pass over the other side of it, it gets a signal again. So now we would begin our turn and begin the holding pattern. So that was a quick demonstration of a direct entry there. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of this, set up the flight again, and we'll look at a offset entry next. Okay, so here we are for example number 2, which will be the offset or the teardrop entry. So again, first things first, what I'm going to do is find out where I am in relation to the fix and then fly back directly towards it. So what I've done to set this up is take off, fly up to 3,000 feet again as normal, and then fly away from the airport on a heading of 220 degrees. So I should be on a radial of approximately the same and almost exactly the same. Perfect. So if we take the reciprocal of that, we should fly on the heading of 040 back towards the airport. So I'm going to turn around and do that now. There we go. Cool. So again, as the plane is turning around, let's just go through this step by step again, just to follow it, so that we're absolutely certain of where we are and what's happening. What I may also do is after this turn is finished, is I might need to resynchronize my heading indicator to the compass there. I just realized that might be a little bit off, but never mind. So the if we look at step 2 of the process again, remember that we need to look at the reciprocal, or we need to find the reciprocal of the course hold for the holding pattern. So as we looked at it before, we already know the course hold is 244 degrees, so the reciprocal of that will be 064 degrees. Okay, let's see. No, I think our heading indicator might be slightly off. Let me see. So I just need to adjust this. This is a little issue that I didn't foresee occurring. There we go. I think we're just about there now. So what I'm going to do is also spin this around so that the VOR navigation makes a little bit more sense. So I need to turn to the right anyway, just to kind of pick up that radial that we had originally. So anyway, if we come back down to the heading indicator there, actually we need to be pointing directly at the VOR station. So this is a very bad setup for this already, but actually we can just do that. So let's say we're pushing on 045 degrees, that'll be alright. We can manage with that. So if we zoom in and use our little hand trick again, so you can see that the horizontal line would start at 295, by approximately 295 there, and then go up to approximately be 125, or yeah, we approximately 125 degrees there. And then if we have a look at if we draw 064, the reciprocal of the course hold, out into our little sector diagram there, you can see that that sits into, or that falls into the offset sector there. So we know that we need to fly an offset entry. Now, to fly the offset entry, what we need to do is, once we hit the fix, is turn to like a 30-degree angle relative to the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of the course hold is 064 degrees. So we need to put in that sort of 30-degree wedge and fly towards the outbound leg of the hold. So once I hit the fix, I will actually need to fly a heading of approximately 035 degrees, and that should put us into position nicely away from the fix. And remember that when we fly that sort of leg of the entry, we also need to fly it for a minute. So what I'm going to do now is come over to the clock here, change the mode over to a stopwatch, so that we're ready to time that sort of leg after we fly over the fix initially. So I'm just trying to line myself back up with this direction in towards the VOR station here. We're only about 2 miles away, so not too far now. You can see that's coming back in line, so I'll just turn left a tiny bit, because we don't want to kind of like stay on one side and then go over to the other side of the course, if that makes sense. So again, because we're heading directly to the VOR station, all we want to do is wait until we lose the signal, and then that's when we know that we're directly over the station. I fear that the needle might swing quite wildly before we get closer. You can see the needle starting to move now. That's normal, that's to be expected, and it's not too big a deal at this point. So you can see we're 0.5 flipping heck, not miles away. The signal should go dead in a second. Yep, there we go. So we'll turn out to 035 degrees. You can see the signal comes back there, and we'll also start the stopwatch there. So remember, we fly this heading for a minute, and then after that minute is finished, then we make a right hand turn, and then we join up with the course hold. So that will be a heading of let me think. That'll be a heading of 244 degrees. So if we spin that around, it's 244. I'm just spinning the VOR around here because that will help me that will help me line myself up with the course hold there. So the course hold is 244 degrees, and I've got my VOR set to 244. So as long as I get this all lined up, then that should ensure that I am flying directly onto the course hold from there. So that is a minute there. What I'm going to do is actually disable the autopilot and make this turn. Now I'm going to go for a standard rate turn to begin with, but I may have to adjust that. I might have to either tighten the turn or whatever the opposite of tighten the turn would be, sort of open the turn up, depending on how quickly it takes us around there. And then once we get back to the fix, what I'm going to do is show the flight analysis, so you can hopefully see that that teardrop entry shape on a map and see how accurately I flew it. I'll be interested to see how accurately I flew it as well. So I'm just doing my best just to hold my altitude now. And I'm hoping that I'm going to see some movement on that VOR indicator just here soon, because that's us almost coming around to a heading of 244 degrees. About 30 degrees away from it now. There's the airfield. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out here. So hopefully I should be heading towards the course hold at this point. We're about 2.5 nautical miles away from the fix. And what I could probably do is re-enable my autopilot here. But you can see that we're starting to get some movement on that VOR needle now. So once that lines up, I'll just turn about 10 degrees to the right just to get ourselves back on track. And then hopefully by the time we get back on track, we should be hitting the fix as well. And then obviously once we hit the fix the second time, then we would begin our holding pattern as normal. Okay, so that's us lining up now, so I'll just do a gentle right hand turn. That said, I don't think my heading indicator is still synchronized with my compass, so if things are a little bit off, that might explain why. Oh wow, I didn't realise I've lost 500 feet there as well. Whoops. Anyway, 0.5 nautical miles, so we should lose the signal in a moment. Actually well lined up for this. I've lost 500 feet in altitude, but I'm actually well lined up for that. So you see the signal goes dead there, comes back, so from here we losing my voice again. From here we would begin our holding pattern. Now if I pause that and then go to end flight view flight analysis, hopefully if we zoom in there you can see that sort of that teardrop shape. So I took off and I flew out away initially to the southwest of Inverness, and then as I came back in you can see that we flew that sort of that 30-degree wedge almost, and then we had like a nice round turn there, and then came back onto the well, just about came back onto the course hold there. So you can see this is where I straightened out, and then we've got the course hold just along this section here. So hopefully that comes out clearly on the video. But you can see we've got that teardrop shape just there. So we came around and then we straightened out, and then just towards the end there, that was, you can see, just about see a tiny little kink in the flight path there. And then obviously the VOR station, which is the fix, went directly over it. So that was a offset or a teardrop entry. What we're going to do is reset the flight again. Before I start recording, obviously make sure that my heading indicator is synchronized, and then we'll do the last entry, which is a parallel entry. Okay, so here we are for our third flight, where we're going to look at a parallel entry. So all I've done for this flight is take off as normal, climb up to 3,000 feet again, and fly out from Inverness on the heading of 340 degrees, just to set this up and find ourselves where we are now. So, first things first, let's find out where we are in relation to the fix, and you can see that we're pretty much on the radial of 340. 338, I think, if we're going to be exact there, but who's counting? Anyway, so obviously first things first is to fly back directly towards the fix, so that would be a heading of 156, 157 according to the VOR indicator there. So we will spin the plane around and get moving in that general direction. Now, looking at the holding pattern again, I know we've done this a couple of times before, but just for the sake of sort of rote and drilling it into your heads there. So the course, the hold course is going to be 244 degrees, but we want the reciprocal of that, which is 064 degrees. So we would make a note of that somewhere. And then once the plane finishes its turn and gets heading directly back towards the fix, we'll just make a couple of minor adjustments on the VOR indicator there, just so we know exactly what our radial is now. So it will be about 332 degrees approximately. No, that's incorrect, because we are flying back directly towards it. So yeah, about 0 should, or maybe 152 should keep us heading directly towards the fix there. Just about there. Cool. So, if we zoom in on our heading indicator there, which should now be synchronized, I'd use our little hand trick to work out the pod method. You'll notice this is the entry that I featured in the holding pattern entries tutorial. Is the same one here. So again, we're going to be looking at sort of 20-degree tilt on the horizontal line, so it'll be approximately 040 to 220 there. And if we draw the reciprocal of the course hold out from the center to 064 degrees, you can see that it falls into the P sector of the pods diagram, which is our parallel sector. So we know now that we need to fly a parallel entry. Now, to set up for that parallel entry, again, if you remember, what we need to do is we need to fly that reciprocal of the course hold for 1 minute after we pass over the fix initially. So what I'm going to do is grab my stopwatch here on the timer, or on the clock instrument there, and then we're just going to be ready to pardon me, just going to be ready to switch our heading around to 064 degrees. And what I'm also going to do, just to try and get ourselves back in line after we do the turn, is I'm going to make some adjustments to the VOR indicator as well after we pass over the VOR station. So we're about 5.2 nautical miles away now, so it should only be a couple of minutes to get back there. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spin this around, because I find it easier to navigate to a VOR station if I sort of flying directly there, directly to it. So yep, cool. So we're lined up there, all good for now. And again, I'm going to use the autopilot for the initial turn, and then once we make that turn back towards the fix, I'll probably disable the autopilot and fly that turn manually, and hopefully it will come out a bit better on the flight analysis screen after I've finished this example. So 3.5 nautical miles, just making sure that everything is good. So once we hit the fix, what I'm going to do is turn to a heading of 064 degrees. So it's going to be pretty much a 90-degree turn to the left here. And what I'll do is I'll wait for the VOR instrument to sort of lose signal, and then as soon as it loses signal, that's the kind of the cue that I'll use to begin my turn. Because if I leave it until the signal comes back, then we're already about half a nautical mile past the fix already, and I don't want to get too far away from the holding pattern there. Because remember, what we're essentially doing is we're currently flying on the holding side of the pattern, but if we keep going in the direction we're going, we're going to pass over the fix and go onto the non-holding side of the pattern. And in this case, in Inverness, it is potentially dangerous because we've got these lines of mountains to the south of the airport. So that's why it's sort of imperative that you show good discipline and remain on the holding side of the pattern, and don't try, and especially during a parallel entry, don't venture too far into the non-holding side. So about half a mile, so the signal should be lost any moment now at this altitude. Waiting for that nav flag to change. There it goes, so we'll begin to turn now. And you see we're half a mile, so that's us half a mile past the fix already, but we're on our way. Now, because we're flying away, we need to begin our timer, and remember we need to fly this leg for a minute essentially, and then that will put us at the the far end of the holding pattern there. And then for the parallel entry, what I'm going to do is once that minute has passed, is do a standard rate turn to the left, and then once we get lined up with the fix, fly directly back towards it. So if we have a quick look now, we should be okay. So our radial is slightly off at the moment. Remember that we're relatively close to the VOR station there, and remember that we did kind of pass over it and go slightly south of it before making that turn, so the radial will be slightly off, but you can see the further away from it we get, the closer it starts getting to that 064, which is ultimately the direction we want to be heading. But anyway, that's 1 minute past, so I'm going to disable the autopilot and make a standard rate turn to the left. And what I'm also going to do actually is change the radial on this to about 035 degrees, because remember that a parallel entry is very similar to the offset entry, and we should be heading back towards the fix at an angle of approximately 30 degrees, not exactly, but approximately 30 degrees. So I've just changed the VOR around there just to kind of help me find that angle. So we're just coming around now, so I'm just trying to think of the best angle to roll out on. I'm gonna turn around to 210 degrees, and that should put me back onto a direction that will intercept the inbound leg of the holes there. So we'll roll out there. This might be a bit too much, but let's have a look and see if we can find. Okay, so our radial is about 050 degrees. So it looks like I'm going to actually jump back onto the inbound leg quite quickly. So if we roll that around to 064. So what I'm going to do now is turn around to 244 degrees. So I think that wasn't the best example of a parallel entry. We are only 1.3 nautical miles away from the VOR station, so we're pretty much right on top of it. My altitude discipline right now is really bad as well. But we'll try and level it out here. And you can see the VOR indicator is already swinging off to the side, so hopefully I'll get within that kind of radial dead zone. I might be too far to one side for it to capture though. Yeah, I think that was potentially quite a bad example of a parallel entry. Yeah, because the signal hasn't gone dead, so I think I've kind of gone up just past the side of the VOR station. But what I'm going to do is just hit pause now anyway and look at the flight analysis, because that's what it's for, to analyse your flying, and we'll see what happened there. Okay, so that's not too bad. I'm gonna keep that example. So you can see we flew out to the sort of the northwest there, came back, and we flew directly over the fix, and we made our turn. So the turn looks like it went out on a good enough heading, and then a nice gentle turn down. You can see that I kind of started to come back at that angle, but I wasn't, I thought that the plane would end up over here somewhere, which it didn't, but that's still, for me, I believe that would still be an acceptable, entry for a parallel entry. We flew over the fix, we done all the steps in order correctly, we got onto the protected side or the holding side of the pattern. So if you remember, the inbound or the hold course would be an imaginary line along this kind of axis here. So we went into the non-holding side, which it's inevitable when you're flying a parallel entry, but we turned back towards the holding side or the protected side. We entered that sort of space and then got ourselves back in line with the inbound leg, and then you can see we went a little bit south of the VOR station there, so that's why it was a little bit skew with just at the end there. But yeah, there you have it. That was an example of a parallel entry. So I hoped, as I said, this video was quite rough. It was quite, you know, it wasn't really planned in any specific way. It was just like jumping in and showing you sort of how I would do it essentially. So so I hope that that was valuable for some of you guys. My next video, I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I'll definitely have another video. Pardon me, out next Saturday. I've got a feeling the only video that I can remember that I'd planned to do is going to be about airport sort of signage and markings. So looking at various things like the runway markings, taxiway lights, what the different lighting systems mean and what they indicate. So I might do a video surrounding that. I might end up breaking that into sort of little kind of subcategories there, but we'll see. It'll be something along those lines. But anyway, I'm rambling now. Thank you all very much for watching. Take care out there, and I will catch you all later.